Take as long as you need.
I can take as long as I. That's what I do. I take as long as I need.
Edit it and post.
We edit, we post,
Yeah.
we edit. Boom. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Dante Carter, founder, CEO of Carter Media Group. I'm here with my man, serial entrepreneur.
Lawton, Chiles, good to see you.
If that name sounds familiar, it's because it is. This man's grandfather, former Florida governor. He even has a high school named after him.
Multiple middle schools and high schools. We keep the children working for us.
You're wrong for that. But check this, right? So we had a discussion today, and what we were talking about is the structure of your story and how you can make your story effective. And Lawton made some good points. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, there's a lady named Nancy Duarte who has worked with Google, Facebook, and she's a master storyteller, and she does all these structures of stories. Okay, and so in the next minute, I'm really going to talk to you about two main stories and two main speeches that you've probably heard of. One is Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, 200,000 people on the Mall at Washington. The next one is Steve Jobs' iPhone keynote, the first iPhone keynote. And what's really interesting about those two speeches is they are totally unrelated until you get to the structure of the story and how they laid out the speech.
And so why is that so important in terms of the structure of the story? I mean, we obviously know, but just kind of breaking it down for, the folks that are watching in terms of them wanting to, because we're talking about people's brands, we're talking about their companies, we're talking about them connecting with their clients. So why does that matter to them?
I think it matters because those speeches could have been duds, right? They could have been, like a in one ear, out the other, because Martin Luther King was not the only civil rights leader.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the only civil rights leader with an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs they weren't the only company that made an MP3 player or made a phone, right? So what made those events resonate with all the other civil rights speeches and all the other technology speeches that were announcing a new product, right? What made those two events landmark events was the structure of the messaging, and that it followed a roadmap, and that you can pick up on and follow as well, if you should so desire.
And so we're talking about the structure. I know one of the things that you really harped on as we were sitting down and we were talking was the fact that each story follows the structure of conflict resolution, conflict resolution, conflict resolution, but it ultimately ends with a resolution. That feeling of hope, that feeling of change. You look at Barack Obama's campaign, and it was, okay, the world is crap. It's a mess right now. But guess what? There's hope. There's change. That's me. Vote for me.
Right, and he basically didn't come out and say vote for me, but Nancy really talks about in her speeches and in her books the fact that there is a tug of war of ideas, and you really have to transport them into the idea of something is bad. Mm-hmm. Here's what it could be if this negative thing was resolved. Mm-hmm. That could be racial stuff. That could be political stuff. That could be technology. And so we're seeing that she really outlined the structure of why do some of your coworkers' bad ideas get adopted over your idea, which is better. And it's all because of the structure and the presentation of the ideas and the what comes before something else. Because why does one person give you directions to somebody's house that you can follow, and somebody else might give you the same directions, but you get totally lost? And it's because of the way they present the information to you that either sticks in your brain or goes right out the window.
So how do you become an effective presenter?
I think some of it's trial and error of you just getting comfortable, right? I mean, Obama gave thousands of speeches, and it's still giving them. And I'm sure if you look at the first 100, they were not very good. Yeah. Same with anyone, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, anyone that you consider a good speaker. So practice and trial and error is number one. The second thing is looking at these speeches that have resonated through time, whether that's the Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King, the iPhone keynote, Barack Obama's speech, maybe even some of Trump's or Bernie Sanders' speeches of late, no matter your political persuasion. It's about motivating a core group of people to take the action that you want them to take, and that usually follows a roadmap of some type.
And so for the folks who deal specifically with products, you mentioned Steve Jobs, and you mentioned his keynote address there that he had with the iPhone. what's one element of that speech that you can relay to these viewers who are trying to connect with their clients that can really help them tremendously?
I think one of the things we talk about is rubbing salt in the wound, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about take a common problem. So let's say you're talking to single men in Atlanta, which we are in Atlanta, and you're trying to get them to join your dating service. Well, what is the main problem that they are trying to overcome? Mm-hmm. And then how can you...
I just had to bring it in. You're walking out of the
shot. So I'm walking away. So what... Okay, so you just asked me about how can product creators sell more of their products.
That's correct.
Okay, and one of the things that we can do here is we take a problem that we know the market has and we rub salt in the wound. We want to make that problem as big and as scary and as unsurmountable as possible by describing it, by relating to it, which Steve Jobs did in his keynote and which Martin Luther King did. You know, he said basically the African American population has been granted and given a bad check, mm-hmm. right, by the government, by the American society, a check that has been marked insufficient funds when it comes to racial equality.
That's
right.
That's
and he rubbed salt in the wound, right? He spent 5 or 10 minutes talking about the fact that it was a raw deal. And then he spent the next 5 or 10 minutes talking about, well, what would happen if that went away and if that problem got solved. And that's all we do as copywriters, as marketers, is we talk about some big problem and we really rub salt in the wound. And when they're like, man, this problem is really bad, then we talk about what would life look like if that was solved? What would life look like if your baby could sleep through the night? What would it look like if your hair could be regrown? What would it look like if you were no longer single? And then we present the solution, right? And so but we want them in that state of conflict. We want them to really feel that pain. And then we want to alleviate that pain. And that takes some trial and error.
Yeah, definitely trial and error.
That's where the money is, though. You know?
Is in trial and error.
So much money.
And trial and error. And so, but in terms of the big piece of advice, the one tip that you want folks to walk away from what they just heard, hearing, just thinking, okay, the one thing that I can walk away from this whole presentation with is what?
I think really asking yourself a question when you're writing any type of advertising or any type, whether that's fundraising, whether that's getting people to watch your video, whatever, is really think about why should they care? What's in it for them? Why should they care about what I'm about to say? And you really have to think about it's not about me. It's about how does Dante benefit from this video that I'm about to shoot for Dante? Yeah. And really having it be all about Dante and really not about me at all. Because nobody cares about me, right? Nobody cares about you.
The former Florida governor's grandson.
They care about themselves, right? People care about themselves.
Yeah.
And so if you can make it about them and not about you, like take out all of the I in your video and put you, your video will be watched twice as long, twice as much, because you're talking about them, not about yourself.
That's right.
It's all about them. I mean, it sounds cliche, it sounds stupid, but I mean, if Obama did a speech and it was all about him, well, people would turn it off.
Yeah.
That's why people are turning off Trump speeches.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know.
But I mean, he has his pulse. I mean,
he does for his people.
Yeah.
He knows what they want to hear. You know, we're going to build a big wall.
And so, I think at the end of the day, people connect to people. You have to remember that, right? People connect to people. You can use your story to connect with people. When it's structured properly and it's done right, it becomes effective. And that's the whole goal of what you want to do, is make your story effective. You want to be able to sell your story without selling your story to people to bring them in. Anything else?
It's not a lie if you believe it.
You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dante Carter.
Lawton Chiles, good to see you.
Former Florida governor's grandson. And follow this guy.
Future mayor of Atlanta.
You so silly. Bye. Gosh, you're so funny. All right, cool. How well does this mic pick up?
I mean, it'll pick up